Hi there, everyone. I hope you're doing well. My name is Tom McGlynn, and I am one of the Placement and Employability Officers at Leeds Trinity University. Today, this is a recording of your core placement delivery, the CV and application session. So for those of you that missed the session, whenever it was arranged in your lectures, you can watch this and add it to the pathway. So I'll get started. Firstly, really important and compulsory. You've got your QR code there, to scan and get yourself onto Moodle so you can access all of our resources. Feel free to pause the video or take a screenshot. And today we're going to be running through the following bullet points. So we're going to be discussing what a CV is, what you should include on your CV, what the main sections of your CV should be, what you should generally avoid writing on your CV, and how you can complete an application form. So really useful stuff, and really vital that you kind of have this on board for when you start your placements, or before you start your placements. So I'll skip through the tasks that we had set up. But first of all, what is a CV? So a CV is a written record of your academic achievements, a portfolio of your employment history, catalogue of your professional skills, a key method of applying for a job, very, very common, concise and brief usually. So a good CV is 2 pages long. Employers don't spend much time kind of taking a look at it, unfortunately. So the idea is to keep it brief, keep it to the point. 2 pages is ideal. And as professional as you can make it whilst letting your personality show through as well. More on how you can do that later. But it's not a complete list of what your CV is, but these are the main points. By this point, a lot of you will have one already, especially those of you who will have worked in kind of part-time jobs already as well, alongside your studies. But yeah, this is what you're generally looking at when you're making a CV. So this is what you should include in your CV. We've got 2 slides here. So this is in order, what should go on. Very to the point, try not to kind of diverge from this too much. It is a really it's a foolproof way of kind of impressing an employer with a CV as kind of as neat and professional as this. So when you start your CV, the very first thing you should have at the top is your name, ideally big and bold, underline it. Make sure that it's visible and that the employer can tell who you are. Then you've got your key contact details, so that's your phone number and student email address. And make sure to include the area you're based in. Now, wouldn't necessarily recommend an exact address, but the general area that you're based in, so be it Leeds or Bradford or wherever, just the general city area. Next, you want a personal statement. Now, this is a very important part of the CV. It's what the employer will read first, and in some circumstances, unfortunately, the only thing that an employer will read. So you've got to make it as eye-catching and as snappy as you possibly can. So it should be informative and outstanding, different to other people's, but again, concise. So you're looking at maybe between 7 and 8 lines altogether. Have a think about your skills, strengths, and goals. And the way that I usually recommend that you kind of structure it is you start off by saying who you are and what it is that you're doing currently. So, for example, I'm an independent, hardworking student of psychology, for example, at Leeds Trinity. Then talk about your skills. So, for example, you could say, I've got great communication skills as evidenced in my time working in this job or this placement, and I am now looking for a role doing this. So go on to kind of, for the third part there, just go on to explain your aims and goals, maybe a little bit about why you want this job or placement too. Third section, really important again, is your skills and industry knowledge. Now this can be a bullet pointed list. What we typically say is you want the name of the skill. So for example, communication, organizational skills, team working, put that in bold, and then after it, just put a dash there and give an example of a time that you have done that skill or where you developed it, where you practiced it. Make sure to pay attention to the job spec too, because the skills that they ask for in the essential or desirable section of a CV, of a job spec, will be the ones that you're going to want to put on your CV. They'll be basing your kind of success on how many of those skills that you have. So we see a lot of CVs come through where the education is just in one block, where we actually want to split it up. So next you want your recent education. So this is just whatever you're doing at the moment at Leeds Trinity. Keep it brief, include the dates you studied, the name of the course, and key modules. We see a lot of CVs that have big descriptions, big paragraphs of what you're doing in your degree. The employer doesn't really need to know that in great detail. Just an idea of the kind of modules you study would be good, the most important ones. Going over to the second part of this now, so then your work experience goes in. Now this is particularly your industry related work experience. So the things that you've done in the past, if you have them, that relate to your degree or area of kind of interest when it comes to the working world. So that can include things like key projects you've worked on, any main contacts, skills, responsibilities, anything that you're particularly proud of, or any kind of major things that you've worked on in those jobs. If you don't have any industry-related work experience, don't worry, because we do have a section coming next, which is the non-industry-related work experience. So this is any kind of job or volunteering, previous placements that you've had, part-time or full-time, regardless of how, even if you just did that kind of shadowing for a day, if you don't have much else experience, if you don't have much more experience than that, it's worth just putting that on there. So if you've got a lot of industry-related work experience, on the other hand, you can shorten or delete the non-industry section to make sure that CV is fitting on 2 pages. It can be quite difficult sometimes to kind of keep up with the amount of space you've got. So this is one thing that you don't really need to prioritize if you've got some good industry-related work experience already. Next, we want your previous education, so the rest of your education, be that A-levels, GCSEs, BTECs, or any kind of diplomas or qualifications that you might have. Keep it really short. It's obviously not as important as your recent education, and it's kind of not going to be something that an employer will take too much time looking at. So just one line for each school or college will be okay. For example, you could say, I have obtained 8 GCSEs from this grade to that grade, including this subject, and then include the grades for just a couple of them. Then you want a hobbies and interests section. So this is a really good opportunity for you to show off your personality. So you're not actually just talking about your professional life here. It's a good idea to kind of let a bit of your personality shine through as well, and let the employer know a little bit about you outside of work. So maybe you play as part of a sports team, or maybe you have your own website or blog, business on the side, whatever it is that you're doing. It's worth including that just to kind of give the employer a bit of an idea about how personable you are, as well as how professional you are. And then finally, references. Generally, we say don't include them on the CV. It can take up valuable space, and you don't know if people are always going to consent to being on your CV. So the best course of action here is to just say references available upon request at the end of your CV. Just that one line will be all you need in going forward and applying for a job. So this is an example CV. This is available on Moodle, but this is generally just kind of across the board. I mean, this one is tailored to media, but generally this is what a CV should look like. So as you can see there, you've got your personal statement at the top, the examples in green, and all the way down to the bottom you've got your hobbies and interests, and it fits on 2 pages. Most importantly, it's pretty concise. You're not spending too much time on one section. But yeah, if you can't read this for whatever reason, then please feel free to go over to Moodle and download the ones that are included on there. But this, generally speaking, is a good example of what your CV should look like. Important as well, don't forget that we run a CV help desk. So this takes place weekly from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a Wednesday and Thursday. It's not LC 118, it's LC 018 in the library, which you go through the through the doors where the books are, and just turn right, keep going to the corner, and that's where that room is, one of the computer rooms. You might know it as IT3. I think it's recently changed names, but there'll be at least one or two members of the placements team to help support you with enhancing your CVs, to prepare for using them to apply for placements. So it doesn't matter, even if you don't have a CV, or if you've got a CV but it needs a bit of work, feel free to come along to those and somebody will be there to help you. It doesn't matter which course you're from either. So some important points to remember. We always recommend that you put your student email address on your CVs and not your personal one when applying for placements. Generally just makes it easier to keep everything in one place. You're not giving your details out to employers. And you can always share your contact details when you've actually gone out on that placement. So you're not just kind of giving it to a bunch of different companies if you don't end up getting the first placement that you apply for. So a little bit on application forms now. So every placement that you apply for through My Career will require you to complete an application form. If you're sourcing your own placement, then this section might be a bit irrelevant to you now, but in the future, you can almost certainly guarantee that at some point you will be filling out an application form for a job. They're really, really common now. It's likely that a lot of you have completed one already, but just feel free to take this on board when going forward. So we have 3 questions on our application forms. We've got a slide on each here. So question 1 is, which role are you applying to? Or what role are you applying to? Please explain why you are suited to this opportunity. And we're looking at around 250 to 500 words for that. So it is brief. But ideally, we're wanting you to kind of briefly describe how your knowledge and experience match the placement job description. So think about the skills that you have, or the kind of jobs you've done in the past, which might make you a good fit for the role that you're applying to now. Explain what motivates you and why you actually want to go out and do this placement, and how it might help you succeed in the future. And there's a little example there. I won't read it out, but feel free to pause the video or screenshot it to have a read of that. It's an example answer to the question. Obviously, that's not a full response. It's just an idea of something that you could say. Question 2. Please tell us about the skills you possess that make you suitable for the role. Please refer to the job description, and again, 250 to 500 words. So even if you've not had any direct experience, you can still highlight the transferable skills that you might have that relate to the role. So generally across the board, just take the employer through the skills, give them a little bit of a pointer kind of as to where you might have got it. You don't need to go into loads of specific details and go into kind of a lot of, you don't need to kind of expand on it greatly, but it's a good idea to kind of talk about them as many as you can and give an example. And then finally, please provide a detailed example, so just one, at a time when you demonstrated one of these skills. And again, 250 to 500 words, but you're looking at focusing on one specific example to expand on maybe a skill that you mentioned in the previous question. Use the STAR method. Now, if you haven't heard of that, there is a more detailed description of it on the interviews video, which is the one that follows this one. But the STAR method is a kind of a way to help you answer questions that are structured like those, where you kind of think about each part of your answer as a letter in the word STAR. So situation, task, action, result, and kind of take the employer through each of those steps. And there's an example there as to how the STAR method might work. There is more on it further on down the pathway, but have a read of that one and think about using that to answer question 3. Really important, one CV does not fit every placement. If you're applying for more than one, which some of you may well be, you will need to tailor each application and each CV that you make to the skills and requirements that are outlined on that particular specification. So it's no good if you're applying for let's say that you are a media student and you're applying for a role as a runner or a assistant producer, to have a CV or application that's tailored to a role in TV, only to then decide that you want to become maybe a marketing executive or a social media assistant, and you've got completely different skills on each application, you're going to need to match the skills that are on your CV to the skills that they're asking for. What's more is that the skills that they ask for on the spec will almost definitely be mentioned in questions at the interview. So testing whether or not you have those particular skills and getting them to give you an example as to when you actually use that skill. And the employer ultimately will be basing their decision to hire you on how many of those skills you have, and if you can provide sufficient evidence of having used them in the workplace or in your academic life. So make sure that if you kind of focus on any particular part of your CV, it's the skills section. So this is a little quick guide to how you actually tailor a CV. So 4 different steps. First step is to analyze what it is that they're actually looking for. So maybe write down a list of the kind of the skills that you can see that are identified on the spec. For part 2, so make a list of them. Make sure you've got the job spec to hand so you can kind of pick them off easily. Part 3, identify which of the skills you actually have, and the more you have, the better. Think of a quick example. And then 4, adapt your CV accordingly. So it could be the skills section, but it could also be the introductory paragraph, or even the kind of the work history. So it's a good idea to just fit in as many as you can, even if some of the least important ones are just in passing. But definitely the ones you have the most or the most important skills, make sure that you make you give sufficient evidence for each skill. And just make sure that the skills that you have in your CV are as similar as they possibly can to the ones that are outlined on the specification. So these now are a list of important skills that you could need for any particular employer. Now, a lot of these skills translate quite well to any industry and any degree background. So whether you're doing a sports degree or a business degree or psychology, anything, these will translate well to any of those industries. So team working, so being able to work together, problem solving, or specifically creative problem solving or doing things differently or your own way. Technological skills, and that could be anything from using tricky kind of software or hardware in the media industry, right the way down to using Microsoft Word or Excel. Timekeeping skills and organizational skills go hand in hand quite well. So making sure you've got track of your calendar and your working week. Showing initiative, communication skills, that could be verbal or written. Critical thinking, leadership skills, and even if you're not leading a team, it's a good idea to maybe kind of speak up and suggest different ways of doing things. Ability to work independently and adaptability. And you'll find that on a lot of different placements, you will be in a different situation from day to day. One day you could be busy, one day you could be quieter, you could be doing different jobs from different days. You never know what's going to come up. So being adaptable is vital to helping you succeed in that kind of environment. So we're looking at CV and application mistakes now then. So these are a list of things that you should not include on your CV. Now, again, this is not a full list. There will be other things that kind of are bad ideas to include, but these are ones that sometimes might not have been obvious, some of them, or ones that are kind of most common. So first of all, don't lie. Employers will find out either by having a look at your social media account or contacting some of your references. Or looking at your LinkedIn. It's really common to get caught out on that. So do not lie on your CV. Be as honest as you can, even if you don't have any experience. Don't just make any up. Include what you have. So don't include a photo. Don't include your date of birth. All you need at the top is your name, contact details, general area you're based. Not only does it take up valuable space on the CV, but it also it can leave you open to kind of unfair bias or discrimination if a photo is included on your CV. Spelling errors, just make sure you're doing a spell check and reading through it carefully before you send a CV. And that goes the same way as bad grammar. It just looks very unprofessional. So poor and inconsistent formatting. Make sure that the CV is as neat as possible. So what we mean by that is not having several different fonts or font sizes. Don't have a random bit in bold. Maybe keep the bold font just to the headings. Don't kind of have an unprofessional font as well. Just one of the more common Microsoft Word fonts, so such as Times New Roman, for example, is always a kind of a safe bet. An unoriginal or uninformative opening paragraph. Now, as I mentioned briefly at the start of the video, that is sometimes the only part of a CV that an employer will actually read. So it's a good idea to make it stand out as much as you possibly can. Not focusing on the relevant experience or achievements or skills, so not tailoring your CV, basically. Make sure that the CV is tailored for the placement that you are applying for and not one that you've previously applied for. If the CV is too long or too short, 2 pages is ideal. We've seen CVs in the past that were up to 14, 15 pages long, and we can't look at them. It takes too long. It's really difficult to kind of sit through and look at that and pick out the relevant information. But likewise, if a CV is too short and it looks like not much work has gone into it, an employer unfortunately just won't bother with it. So that 2 pages exactly is what you're aiming for. And you can increase and decrease the size of different sections in your CV to suit that kind of ultimate goal too. If your contact information is out of date or incorrect, then the employer is not going to be able to get in touch with you to inform you whether or not you've got the placement. So make sure that the contact details are all up to date and current, and don't use an inappropriate email address too. It can be seen as really unprofessional or even offensive, and just your student one will do. And that brings us to the end. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to drop us an email or come and attend one of our sessions. So it's worth having a look on My Career, seeing when your respective placement officer has their kind of one-to-ones or drop-in sessions open. And we also encourage you all to attend a CV session at least once before you start your placement. It'll just make it that bit easier for you once you start, just to make sure that you've got everything in order. But thank you very much for listening, and very best of luck to you all undertaking your placements, and we'll see you soon. Thank you very much.